Well, good evening and welcome to the first of the Tuesday night Success for Life Think Success mastermind groups. This is a time where we can come together and, as members of the mastermind group on Facebook and as clients of Success for Life, and spend some time learning, spend some time, from my standpoint, teaching, and to spend a little bit of time answering questions. So I know the first meeting is kind of the first time, so maybe not everybody's going to be able to get on. It's a new time, and the next 2 weeks we probably won't have the call because it'll be Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. But I did want to get this out tonight and spend a few minutes talking about what we're going to do here and maybe just a brief lesson and talk a little bit about myself too. So let me get started with the idea of what we're going to do here. The idea is that we come together, we have a few minutes of a lesson, and then we go into questions and answers. As you're working through the material, whether it's You Were Born Rich or Thinking into Results or the Entrepreneur's Base Camp or whatever program you're working on, there's going to be questions that come up on your mind from time to time. And I would suggest, as those come up during the week, to write them down. You'll obviously be getting your lessons regularly, and there'll be some teaching in there, but there may be times where you need a little extra help. And this is the time to come in, raise your hand, and ask for that help. So I appreciate you coming in on a regular basis. I'm going to be here every Tuesday night, except for, like I said, next week and the following week. But on Tuesday nights, I'll be here at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So if you don't have the link for the Zoom meeting, you can get it on the website or on the group. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about what we do here. I am a PGI, Procter & Gallagher Institute certified consultant. What that means is that I teach the material that Bob Proctor and Sandy Gallagher have put together, and I do that all over the world. So I'm available and able to help people and companies and anybody else, any place in the world. There's no limits on my scope. There's no, doesn't have to be 5 miles from my house, because today we have something called the internet. It's really easy to connect like this on Zoom or other means. There's lots of ways to connect, to talk, to get to know each other, and for me to help you, because that's what's really important to me. My main purpose in life is to serve my clients. And I think one of the main things that I can do is take my years of knowledge, my years of experience, and help other people to not have to go through the same experience that maybe I've gone through, and to move forward quicker. Jim Rohn, one of my favorite people, he said there's only two real ways to get experience. Either get experience yourself or you get experience from other people. And as he calls it, OPM, other people's experience, is much easier to obtain than experience for yourself, because you can get it quicker, doesn't cost as much, and normally it doesn't hurt as much. So I think the idea that you can meet with somebody like me or Bob Proctor or Sandy Gallagher and get a knowledge from their experience is really important. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit more about me. I have been in a number of different businesses in my life. I currently reside in Vancouver, Washington, and I'm currently an insurance agency owner. I own an independent insurance brokerage here, and I also do coaching. So my goal in life in the next year or two is to do more coaching on a full-time basis and much less insurance. Insurance is good. I love it. It's been a great business for me. But over the course of time, I started out doing personal development and learning about this material way back when I was in high school. back probably in 1975 or so, I found out about Earl Nightingale. And I was thinking about that today. How did I find out about Earl Nightingale? My parents were great people, but I don't think they'd ever studied this type of material, nor had they ever talked to me about Earl Nightingale or any of this material that I teach today on a regular basis. So I think it was in junior achievement, and I met a lot of business people. Worked with 3 different companies through my 3 years of high school that mentored us in junior achievement. And I believe, I'm trying to remember, but I believe it was an actuary that worked at Continental Life that introduced me to Earl Nightingale and his work. Kind of interesting that, you know, somebody would teach 14 or 15 or 16-year-old kid something about personal development that would last a lifetime. Maybe that's you, maybe that's me, helping somebody to reach up and go forward for a lifetime of achievement and learning and success. Think about that. So as we think about that, I moved from there. I was buying this little packet. It came in the mail. It was a little booklet that you could read, and inside there was a cassette tape. And I would take those cassette tapes and listen to them over and over and over again. Those little tapes were invaluable because Earl would tell 3 or 4 stories on each one about something, and it would always be positive. It would also be motivational, and generally speaking, it really helped to change your mind, to help program your brain. Well, I don't remember what year Earl died, but it wasn't that far into that. I should look that up probably. But when he passed away, I kind of lost interest in that material, but I had this great big stack. It was in a box in my bedroom of these tapes and the booklets, and I just kept reading them. I knew he had passed away, and I knew that the program wasn't being done by him anymore. And with his voice and his way he did things, I just loved it. So I didn't buy any more of them, but I kept listening to them over and over and over again. One of the programs that I listened to a lot that I had bought was called Lead the Field, which was a really valuable program to me, as I still listen to that program today. It's a great program. If you've never listened to Lead the Field, it will help you get your mind going in the right direction. Well, anyway, time would go on, and as I went through college, and then I got out of college and I started in the sales business. And if you've ever been in sales, you know that one of the most important things you need as a salesperson is a positive attitude, because you get told no probably 100 times to one time you get a yes. So I started listening to that material again over and over and over again as I was driving in between sales calls. Now, mind you, I was selling fire engines. People probably don't think that fire engines get sold, but somebody has to help the local fire department come up with an idea for the fire truck and then make sure that it gets built properly. The orders get put into the manufacturer and then get it delivered and teach them how to use it. Well, that's what I did. I did that. I lived in Boise, Idaho at the time, and I did that in the state of Montana, half the state of Washington, and the state of Nevada. I was kind of centrally located, but my longest customer was probably a 12 or 13-hour drive, and my closest customer was a couple hours. So when you think about that, I spent a lot of time driving. I remember those years of driving 35, 40,000 miles a year. And all that time I was driving, I was listening to material that was helping me to change my mind, helping me to program what was going on. Now, I really didn't understand what all that was doing, and I didn't understand at all why I kept listening to it at the time, but I did. I kept listening to it. I kept finding it interesting, and buying more programs and listening to more programs, and I was doing better. My success was going sky high. For the time, it was a very good time. As that time went by, I eventually moved to the state of Washington and took over another person's territory and became very successful. And it was a very good time because it was a bigger area, lots more money, lots more cities, in that business, more use of fire trucks, more sales, more growth, more expansion, all those things resulted in more sales. So it was very good for me. I built a business that was doing really well. I reached that point of that business and it started to fold over on me a little bit. Things changed. Manufacturer said, we don't need you anymore. I went away from that business and went into another business. You know, that's a recurring theme in my own personal life. I've seen these peaks where I reached a plateau that was just wonderful. I was doing great. I was making more money. I was doing the things I wanted to do. I was able to afford the things I wanted to buy. And then it would start to slide off because something happened. And sometimes it was a straight down slide off where there was no stopping what was going on. Well, every time I hit bottom or close to bottom, I'd pull that old material out again and I'd start listening to it. And I just kept doing that over and over again, like 4 or 5 times in my career. When things changed, I decided I needed to change in order to move forward with it. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but when you have these ups and downs in your life, if you don't pull on your bootstraps, get back into your books and your tapes and your CDs, and now today on the internet, and get that good material to help your brain get going again, you'll fall down and stay down. You can't do that. You got to get back up. So I did this several times over the years. Came about 1997, I went to work for a company in Portland, Oregon. And within a couple of years, they asked me to move to Portland, and I moved to Vancouver, Washington, right across the river. And I've been here since then, but I've gone through a couple more changes since then. In 2000, when I moved here, I was going to, they hired me to come down here. And when I came here, they got rid of the product I was selling. And they said, well, you know, you can go do this or go do that. Really wasn't an option, but I just moved. I'd spent a lot of money moving. I bought a house. A lot of things were changing. And all of a sudden, boom, things changed overnight. And I went back up again as sales manager for that company. That was a good experience. It was a great experience. I made more money than I'd ever made. I was helping my salespeople. I had 7 salespeople working with me at the time, and I was helping them to grow and expand, and really realized that somebody in a job like sales management could really become a great mentor. Even though I was younger than everybody I worked with, I could help them grow and expand their capabilities. That's kind of where I first got it. That's where I got the idea that teaching this material and helping people grow beyond what they even thought was possible was really what I wanted to do in my life. So I've been doing that ever since. Well, things change, and in 1997, went to 2000, went to 2007. That company was sold. I was not sold with it. So I went to work for another company, and I spent a few years helping them develop a whole new division of their business. And then that was sold too. So things in my life, up and down, up and down. I don't know if you've had that. You know, I think in my dad's time, people had one career their whole 30 or 40 years of working, and then they retired. It seems like in my life, I've had 8 or 9 different jobs, probably 3 or 4 different career fields. And here I am in another one. It's kind of interesting when you think about it. It really changes your mind. I mean, I've done a number of different things, but it's all been based around sales and management and personal growth. So it's a good thing. Anyway, in 2010, 2011, I was going through a big change because I could see that my job was going to go away. I was training the guy that was going to replace me. They didn't tell me that, but I could certainly feel it. So I started looking at what do I want to do next? Because at 52 years old, I was thinking, this isn't going to be easy to get a job. So I started looking around, and one morning I woke up really early in the morning, and I decided I needed to write a book. I wanted a residual income business or something that I could make money on, and I didn't have to be present to do it. So I said a book would be a good idea. So I wrote, got up 3 o'clock in the morning, went into my office, came in here, and I started writing the outline for the book. And normally I'd just, roll back over and go back to sleep. For some reason, I got up and I went in. I started writing it. I got the outline done. Over the course of a couple of months, I got the book done. I had to get some help because it was a book about nutrition and food, about how to live healthy. And I didn't know much about that at the time, so I thought it was a great thing to learn about. And as I did, I got the book finished. Well, when you finish a book, what do? You go find a publisher and get him to do it. So I started listening to Mark Victor Hansen on the internet. And during that same time, I ran into Bob Proctor and Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins and all the other fathers of personal development for our time. My dog is down here growling, so I'm not, anyway, stop. So anyway, the bottom line is I decided I wanted to get the book published. Mark Victor Hansen was doing a program called Wealthy Writer's Wisdom, where he was helping new authors get their book published. So I went to Los Angeles, flew down there, and met Mark. He had just come back from China. He was over there, talked a lot about that. But when I walked in the room, the auditorium where the meeting was being held, it was called Author 101. Great, I think they still put them on. But great opportunity to go meet publishers and other authors and learn all about the business. Mark was there standing in the corner. I went over and talked to him ahead of time, and he was very nice. And he said, when I'm done speaking, let's talk some more. So I agreed to that. When he got up on the stage, he warmed the audience up. He's one of those guys that they always put on first because he's so motivational, he's so inspirational. He gets everybody wound up, and he had everybody in the room wound up. I am a wealthy writer. I am a wealthy writer. I was there. I was ready to write. Yeah. So anyway, when Mark gets about halfway through getting everybody warmed up, he stops everybody and he says, I want you all to be quiet. I want you to meditate, pray, whatever you do, for my friend Bob Proctor. Last week, he was on this stage and he had some sort of a heart problem. And there was a doctor in the front of the auditorium who saw that. He could see there was something wrong. And he grabbed Bob and took him up the street to the hospital. And Bob's been in there for the last week and they haven't figured out what's going on yet. All of a sudden, when we were in that moment, or it seemed like 5 minutes of silence, thinking about Bob, I got this thing in my head going off saying, you got to go meet Bob. You got to go talk to Bob. Bob's got something that you need. It was just as loud as could be in my head. In fact, it was so loud, I started to get up. I started to leave the room. My friend who flew down there with me grabbed my arm and said, you can't get up. You came here to listen to this stuff. Where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to go up the street and see Bob. He's in the hospital. He said, no, he's got a heart problem. Anyway, long story short, I talked to Mark after he got off the stage. He said, no, you can't get in. See him, I already tried. But, if you think that's right, you'll get a hold of him. So he told me that he and Bob had masterminded for years. We talked about that a little bit. And I decided at that point, I needed to talk to Bob Proctor. That point was pretty poignant in my mind. It was strong. It was a desire. I had to do it. There was no doubt I was going to do it. So I started calling his office, probably more regularly than I should have, maybe daily. And I wanted to either talk to him or know that he was okay. And all I was getting was a recording. Now, that's pretty disturbing when you're in that state of mind where you have to talk to somebody and you're not getting through to them. So I kept leaving messages. And finally, after a couple weeks, I get a phone call from a guy. And he says, hey, my name's Mark. I work for Bob, and you got to quit calling. You're a stalker. You need to just stop. Don't do it. So I started talking to Mark about it, and I said, what do I do? I mean, how do I meet him? He said, well, he's got things on his schedule. He's okay. He's going to be fine. He's got things on his schedule in a couple of months, and he'll be out on tour and doing the things that he does, and you can meet him. And I said, well, that's not what I mean. How do I know I want to work with this guy. I know I need to work with this guy. So he explained to me how he has consultants that work for him, that help him to do things, to teach people, to spread the word of how the mind works. And I was so excited about that. I was like, okay, sign me up. When they told me how much it cost, that slowed me down for a minute. It wasn't cheap. And as he told me all about that, I was like, well, I need to do that. So it took me a few weeks to get the money together, but I did it. Now I knew I was going to see Bob at some point. There were 3 or 4 events coming up, and then there was a training. After 6 months of being molded into this new position, this training was coming up in October. So I said, okay, I'm going to try to make 2 or 3 of these events that Bob's going to be at so I can meet him. So sure enough, first meeting I go to was down in Phoenix, and I walked over, I met Bob, told him that I was going to see him in a couple more weeks. Second time came around, also in, I think it was in Scottsdale, and went down to another meeting with him and met him again. I think he was starting to think, what's going on with this guy? But then I told him, I'll see you in a couple weeks in Florida at training. And he said, okay, that would be nice. We'll get a chance to talk there. So I flew down to Florida, had a great training. Room wasn't real big. It was 30 some people, 35, 40 people all over the world. They were just a great bunch of folks. But as the first day came, they had place cards at each table, and you had to sit where your place card was. So here I was sitting in the very back of the room. Not exactly where I wanted to be. I'd prefer to be up in front where I could talk to Bob, or at least be close to him, but I was fine. A lot of material, got through the first day. Second day, my place card is right up front. It is right at the corner of the stage, and it is in that spot where, he's spending a lot of time on that side. And I'm like, this is really close now. I'm not sure I wanted this either. But as he's giving a lesson on the stage, he's talking about, what do you want? And one of Bob's big things, if especially when he gets going, it's, what do you want? And when he does that right here, and he's about that far away from you, you feel it. He's drilling into your mind, and he's asking you, what do you want? And I'm going, man, I don't know, but I know I want to work with you. So sitting there, kind of come back to my senses. The room leaves, everybody goes out, use the restroom, get a drink or whatever. And I'm the last person out, which means I'm the last person into the restroom, which means I'm late coming back. And I'm walking back into the room, and Bob's standing out in the lobby of the hotel, and he's on his phone talking to somebody. He motions me over, and just a minute, I'll talk to you. So I go over and I talk to him, and when he's off the phone, and he said, so I've seen you a couple of times lately. I've noticed you a few weeks ago. Tell me about you. So I told him who I was, and, that I was there for training, and obviously he knew that. And he said, so what's the deal? I told him the story I just told you, that, I went to Los Angeles, met Mark Victor Hansen, heard about his heart situation, and that, here I am. I'm ready. I'm ready to help him build his business. He looked at me and kind of looked at me again, and he said, well, that explains it. Now I know why that happened. And I'm like, man, I don't want to be known for that, right? So anyway, great first meeting with Bob. Since then, went to work for him for a while, worked directly with him, coaching coaches, have been a consultant with him off and on since then for about 9 years. Recently came back into his newer program, Thinking Into Results, Proctor Gallagher Institute, and have been a consultant with that group now for a while. But I'm building my business, and in doing so, what I want to do is I want to give you lots of content and help you to move. Because truly what I want to do is serve you. So I hope maybe some of that story resonates with you. Maybe you've met somebody like that before. Maybe you've had an experience like that was really awesome. Maybe you can tell me about it sometime. I'd love to hear it. But right now, I'd just like to thank you for being here again. I know it's kind of a long story, but I think it's an interesting story. I always like to hear it because it reminds me of the path that I've taken the last 9 or 10 years. That path has been pretty remarkable. You know, I worked for Bob for a while. I spent time coaching coaches all over the world. It was amazing. And then I left. And I left and started an insurance agency. And in the last 6 years or so, as I did that, that has just gone, it's been a dream. And I look back and I say, how did that happen? And I realized that truly how it happened was I used the principles that I've been teaching. I used the principles that I teach today to do that. I've attracted those clients to me. I've never spent money on advertising. I've never done the things that maybe you would think people would do in that business to get clients. It's all been word of mouth and attraction. So when I look at the way I built my business, which is successful, very successful, that now I'm able to say, I know how this works. I am a product, not only of the product, but I'm a product in a different field that I didn't really know much about 6 years ago. I picked insurance because it was a residual income business, right? When you get somebody and you get their renewal, you get to help them again and you get to make more money. I wanted to bring my daughter into the business. So for me, it was a residual income, multi-generational family business that could go on perpetually. There's no reason an insurance agency has to stop as long as somebody's licensed and able to help people. So that was my goal. That's what I've reached. And when I reached that goal last year, a little over a year ago, I realized I need to get on with the next step. And the next step is to go back and to help more people in a different way. Because while I can save people money on insurance or make sure they're properly insured, that's important. But it's more important to me that I help you and I help other people to grow and to really become the person they need to be and get to where they're happy and they're successful. That's what this is all about. You know, we all have a calling in life. We all have a purpose in life. We all have a meaning for our life. And if we're not looking for that meaning and we're not thinking about what do you want, then we might not get there. We might miss the boat. We might miss the bus. We might just forget to get up when we fell down. So for right now, I think maybe enough storytelling. I want to talk briefly this evening about mindset, because mindset is probably the biggest thing that we can do, that we can think about going into any time in our life. Mindset's probably the most important thing that keeps us going and gives us the ability to move forward in the way that we want to. You know, I think lots of times that mindset is really hard for people to understand. And the reason for that is that we're talking about understanding something that's pretty difficult to understand. We don't really have a picture of mindset, nor do we have a picture of the mind. So people, when they think about mindset, or if they think about mindset, they kind of go, well, yeah, that's something, it's motivation, it's inspiration, it's whatever it is. But what I would tell you is mindset is a way of living. It's a way of changing the way your mind works to give you what you want in life. So I want you to think about a couple things. I'm going to flip the screen up here and talk about a couple of things that I think you'll find interesting. Here's the first screen that I want to share with you. You know, can you think of 3 things that you could have done this week to improve the results that you wanted, but you didn't? What really stood in your way of doing that? You know, what makes you do things not as well as you want to, or do things that you don't even want to do, and you do them anyway? What really causes you to do that? Have you ever thought about that? I think it has something to do with your mindset. I think it has something to do with the way your mind works. So there's a word here, and the word is paradigm. Think about that word for a minute. It's kind of a catchword. Maybe it's something that you've never really heard of, or you think it's a computer thing or something. I don't know. Paradigm. But think about this. In order to change your results, your paradigm must change. So, what are paradigms? What really are those things? Well, paradigms are filters through which we live our lives. Paradigms are a multitude of habits combined together in our mind, in our subconscious mind, that create the way we act. Paradigms create the habitual responses we give. They create the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we think, the way you tie your shoes. Everything is a paradigm. When you get up in the morning, your paradigms kick on, and all of a sudden you jump out of bed or you crawl out of bed and you head for the bathroom and you do your thing in there, and you do that every day, right? It's a habitual way of doing things. That's a paradigm. Well, I want you to think about how those paradigms affect you and how they've limited you or kept you where you're at today, because there's opportunities everywhere. There's only lack and limitation in your mindset. So as you start to think about your mindset, I want you to think about your mind. Now, when I ask you to think about your mind, what do you think of? Well, a lot of people think of the brain, because that's really the only picture. Maybe from high school biology, you remember seeing a brain, and you think, well, that's the mind. Well, mind is no more just the brain than it is your whole body. Mind is the way things work. The brain is the switching station. Mind is everything. So as you start to think about your mind, you need to have a picture to think about it. You know, we think in pictures. And if you ever thought about that, close your eyes. Just close your eyes and imagine the front door of your house. Do you see it? Do you see what color it is? Do you see which way the door opens? Does it have windows? Does it have multi-panels on it? Sure, you can see that. And as you open the door and you walk into your entry, you notice everything about that. You know, what color is the floor? You can probably tell me, right? What fixtures are in the room as you walk into them? We know this. We think in pictures. And we think in pictures about everything. But you know what? We've never had a picture of the mind. Well, back in the early 1930s, there was a doctor down in Texas by the name of Thurman Fleet. And he was in the healing arts. He was a chiropractor, and he was teaching people how to heal themselves. And he said, I really can't teach people to heal themselves because this is a holistic thought. This is, you know, mind and body. And if you don't have a picture of the mind, then all you can see is the body. And that's not really what you want. So he came up with this little drawing. And I want to share it with you now. He called this drawing, well, back then he called it the stick man. But today we call it the stick person. And it's really simple, right? Just a couple circles and a few lines. And Dr. Fleet said, this is going to represent the mind. The big circle on top represents the mind. And there's smaller circle down below represents the body, which is really the way it works. The mind controls the body and everything in it. So having the mind bigger makes sense. So he drew a line across the middle of it, and he said, there's two parts of the mind. There's the thinking mind, which is the conscious mind, and there's the emotional mind. Now, when you think about that, everything that comes into you comes in as a thought, and that thought makes either a good impression on you and becomes a positive emotion, or it makes a bad impression and becomes a negative emotion. You know, you may be able to think about something that makes sense, to you and you fall in love with it. And you take that idea and you just keep going with it. On the other hand, you may find something that doesn't resonate with you and you don't like it and you have negative feelings. So let's think how this works. You choose your thoughts. Your thoughts cause your feelings. Your feelings cause your actions. Your actions produce results. You ever thought of that? This changed my life when I figured this out. There is a way that this works. I'm choosing my thoughts. My thoughts are turning into emotions with feelings. And then I'm going out and doing something. And as soon as I do it, with that action, I'm getting a reaction or a result. And then I can figure out if I like it or not. If I like it, I can keep doing it. If I don't like it, I can change it. Think about that. That's how your mind works. That's how your body works. That's how we work as people. So let's just think about this one more time. We got the mind and we got the body. And I think that little graphic, that little stick person, the one I wear on my shirt all the time, is what really starts us down that path. If you've never thought about the stick person before or the way the mind works, I think it's a great time to take hold of it and understand, and we'll talk a lot more about the stick person and how it works and how you can use it to your benefit. But I just want to go back to, it's the end of the year. It's time for the first of the year. It's a good time to think about what you want. What do you want? What do you really, really want? Be careful what you want, right? Remember Job in the Bible, he said he was thinking about all these negative things that could happen to him. And guess what happened? They all happened plus a little. And he in one day lost everything. So when you start to think about that, fear comes in and takes over. And I want you to think today, how often are you thinking in fear and your results are getting affected by it and turning negative? If you find fear in your life, you find fear in your thoughts, you've got to be careful because that fear will end up in your results. It's almost impossible to have a good result when you're in fear. So another thing to always remember is that you need to be prepared. People are always willing to give you their opinion, right? Opinions are everywhere. The old saying, opinions are like something else, but everybody's got one, and very few people understand where you're at. So as you start thinking about this materials, you start thinking about changing the way you're doing things, just remember that other people don't understand where you're at, nor do they understand what you're learning and the way you're learning it. So be prepared. As you start to read the books, as you start to do the work, as you start to do the material, be ready. Be ready for opinions. So, as you move into this new consciousness with our group here, I want you to think about prosperity consciousness. There's a big fact out there that everything already exists. The old Upanishads, one of the oldest writings in history, said from abundance, he took abundance and still abundance remained. There's no lack of abundance. There's no lack of prosperity. It's just a matter of tuning yourself in and getting into that right mindset, that right vibration, so that you're on the same vibration as the prosperity that you want. Think about that. That's so simple, right? It seems too simple. It's too easy, but that's the way it works. Tune in your consciousness to where you want to be. As we go through the next weeks and months and we talk about different programs and work through different programs, I want you to know that that's what's going to change. Your mindset's going to change. Your prosperity consciousness is going to go up and up and up. Prosperity consciousness is really what it's all about. It doesn't just mean money. When I say prosperity, you can be rich in relationships, you can be rich with your kids, you can be rich in your work. If you're happy with the things you're doing and you have a prosperity consciousness, it changes everything. So think about that. The relationships are there. You just need to figure out how to make them more prosperous, how to give more so that you'll get more, how to give more so that you'll just build and build and build on yourself and on others. Really important stuff here. And finally, let's think about thinking, because thinking is the highest function that a human being is capable. You know, the experts say that it's something like 5% of the people think. Remember the saying of Dr. Ryan, it was 5% of the people think, 95% of the people think they think, right? Most people don't think. Most people just have mental activity. So when you're able to start breaking apart the mental activity and the thinking and start working on the thinking, you know, accepting a thought into your mind consciously and then going with it. You know, if you set a new idea in your mind today for a new ideal, for a new goal that you're working on, and you keep that in your mind and you just keep working on it over and over and over again, it will happen. It has to. Because if it's in your mind and if it's a good goal, you're able to continue that. Just think about that. Think about that little stick person we just talked about. How your thoughts come into your conscious mind. You get to accept or reject them at that point. And if you accept them, they go into your subconscious mind and they create a change in you through your paradigms, through your programming that you've got in your subconscious mind. And you get a feeling, good or bad, happy or sad or anything else. But then you go do something. If you ever wondered why you did something and couldn't explain it, this really explains it. It's the programming that's there and it's the thought that you accepted. There's really only one thing you can change easily in that process, and that's accept or reject the thought. Changing your paradigms takes longer. It takes some help. It takes learning. It takes education, but it's something you can do. It's something we're going to do here. So I hope you'll stick with us and do that. So for right now, I'm going to call it a good time to open it up for questions, but I don't see anybody here for questions. So we'll leave off the questions this evening. I want you to remember one last thought from Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich. What the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. Think about that. What you can conceive, anything that you believe in. Do you think Steve Jobs or Bill Gates and they didn't have anything to even work with. They just had an idea. They conceived it. They believed in it. And as they achieved it, they became not only famous, but rich. Do you have something in your mind that you can conceive? A new idea, a new thought? Something that maybe it's as simple as I want to start a business. You know, if you can conceive it and you can really, really believe it, there's a pretty good chance, guess what? You will achieve it. It's not just a chance. It doesn't say what the mind of man can conceive and believe it might achieve. It doesn't say that. It will. It can achieve. So start thinking about your mindset this week. As you work through your goals for next year, I know it's the end of the year. It's a great time to work towards goals. Start thinking about what you want. Start thinking about the things that might be way outside your normal want. You know, a good goal makes you stretch. The ABC goals. An A goal is something that you know you can achieve. A B goal is one that you know you can achieve with a little extra work, but there's a path, you already know it. The C goal is a goal that you have no idea how you can achieve. The C goals are what you want to set. C goals are goals that you can really get out there and learn stuff to do it with, right? If you set a C goal, if you say you're going to not just raise your income by 5 or 10%, but you're going to raise your income 100%, guess what? You're going to figure out a way to do it, because if you set it out there, it's going to happen. So I want you to start thinking about your goals this week. I want you to come back first of the year with a really grand goal, one that scares you a little bit, because really good goals are not just going to be ones that, yeah, if I work 2 extra hours a day and I take every other Saturday, and no, those aren't worthy goals. You know, the worthy goal of buying a bigger, fancier car or a bigger, fancier house, make sure it's big enough. Make sure it scares you, because those are the kind of goals that will make you stretch. Those are the kind of goals that will move you forward. And I think tonight, as we wind this down, that I want to leave 2 thoughts with you. One is you need to set goals. Because if you don't set goals, it's kind of like a ship without a rudder. You know, you set out to sail and the wind blows you wherever, and you never know what happened. Have you ever had a goal, maybe a New Year's resolution? I think a lot of people use those. But you had that New Year's resolution where you said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to lose 5 pounds. And by the end of January, you've gained back the 5 pounds. Maybe you lost it, but you've gained it back plus some. So next year you say, I need to lose 10 pounds. It doesn't work, because you didn't write it down, you didn't have a plan for it, and you didn't make it work. You know, to make a real goal, it takes time. It takes time, and it takes effort. And the first thing I want you to do as you do your goals this year is write them down. Doesn't matter how big they are or how small they are, make some big ones. Remember, going back to Jim Rohn, he said he always liked to write his goals in his journal. And then as he did them, he'd flip back the pages and check it off. It gave him some gratitude. He could sit there and say, man, I'm really happy I met that goal. Not a bad idea. You just write them down, make them big, make them scary. Make something on there that scares you. And then as we start to talk about this, and we go forward weekly with these calls, I want you to get on the call and we can talk about it. We can talk about what you're doing and how you're doing it. I can give you some ideas as the material that we put in the group comes out and you say, I need something. I'm going to be happy to provide that content to you. I'm going to be happy to help you with the programs that we have, because I know they change your life. I know there's nothing better in the market or in the world today than the programs that we teach, because I know they work personally. So tonight, tomorrow, whenever you watch this, I just want you to make sure to come back every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific time, and we'll talk some more. Come back to your mastermind group, get in, join in, get to know each other, tell some stories, ask some questions, get help, ask for help, give help. All those things are good. I really wish you a great, successful end of 2019, because I know 2020 is going to come, and we're going to have a perfect 2020 vision for next year that's going to lead us into mass achievement of success. Remember, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or a worthy goal. Remember that worthy goal. You got to have it. And then progressively, we'll realize it next year together. Thanks so much. Have a good evening, and we'll talk to you soon.